Okay, so for those who weren't here last time, uh, we really just went over some resources, and I can send you a PDF, and I should have sent it to everyone else, just of basic tools that you can use for future study. And then we looked at the alphabet. We'll relook at the alphabet, and then I want to spend maybe the first 30 minutes, however long it takes us, to just sort of read some words in Greek to get used to the alphabet, because really the only way that we're going to get used to it is just by sounding them out. Um, yeah, yeah, we'll take our time. It won't. It's not as tricky as you think. You get used to them because there's thankfully not a whole lot of ones that look super unfamiliar. They're all generally in the shape that you can comprehend. It's not like Hebrew or Sanskrit. So if we're looking at the beginning of lesson one, in part one, um, I'm just going to make the sound of the letter, and you guys can, yeah, we can, I can say it, you can call it back to me. That way we get used to making the sounds. Um, so first we have alpha, which is ah. Very good. Um, Beta is b. Gamma is g. Delta d. Epsilon is e. Zeta is z. Eta is either e or a. I will usually go for a just to distinguish it from a long I. So we can do e or a. Yeah, we'll do a in the classroom. Theta is th. And note that it's like th and thick, not like the, which would be slightly different and connotates more of a D sound than a T sound. So th. Um, Iota is I or E. Yeah, and this is something that when you're reading it will honestly be relatively intuitive, just based off how you would pronounce things typically. Like if you see like kurios or something like that, it would sound weird to you to say kurios. So most of it's intuitive when you start reading the language. And if not, I mean, we all know what you mean. Kappa is k, lambda is l, mu is m, nu is n. This one trips people up. Xi is xa. You can, if it helps you, you can say a vowel before it. So X, it's the same sound as X, just you normally don't say it alone because it's two consonants. So you can say X. Omicron is A. Pi is P. Rho is R. Sigma is S. And if you note that there are two, we talked about it last time, but I'll reiterate. There are two different lowercase sigmas. The first one, Yvonne, do you remember what the difference is? Um, Close. Yes. Yes. So that part. The plural, in English, yeah, the end S would be plural. In Yeah, so the first one, the S that looks like an O with a little stick out of it, that one is used at the beginning and the middle. So basically anywhere that isn't the last letter. Um, I can give an example here if I have a Word document open. Um, so if I have, there we go. If I have something like sigma, there we go. This is going to have that, or if I have something like I don't know, Paritasso, it's going to look like that. But if I have Kurios, for example, it's not going to look like, hello. Um, yeah, it won't look like this. It'll look like that. Or one you might be familiar with, Lagos would look like that. So that's just to note. But as long as you know what both of them look like, it shouldn't trip you up. We're just redoing the alphabet. Okay, so that's sigma. Um, and then tau, we have t, and that looks like a capital T in both the lowercase and uppercase. Upsilon is you'll also commonly hear it pronounced just oo, which works totally fine. It's more familiar, and it makes sense. Phi is f. Originally, it was pronounced puh, but we're not going to do that, obviously. Um, uh, this one's a little unfamiliar to English, but he is ch. And if this one is troubling to you, you can always just do k. Maybe try to make it a little bit more emphatic, but it's but doing k aggressively, I guess, works just as well. Psa is it's equal to just a P and an S, so psa. And this is another one that you're not really going to see, like obviously on its own. So like tipsy, like you're used to saying it, you're just not used to saying it by itself, kind of like X. So yeah, psa. And then we have the last one is omega, which is O. Um, Great, you all did great. So now we'll get lots of experience with it. You'll get familiar with it. Just a few more things on pronunciation. So we have vowel length. So Greek has 7 vowels. Unlike English, where none of the vowel, like any vowel can be either short or long, there are some that are always long and then some that are always short. And the ones that are always long versus always short are the ones that have distinct forms. So for example, e and e or e and a, the eta, or sorry, the epsilon and the eta, because they're both an e sound, but one of them short and one of them is long, the epsilon can always be short and the eta can always be long, because they're distinct forms. For something like a or a, which only has one, there's no long a alpha and short alpha, so a can be both long or short. I'm telling you this just for reference. When you're reading, this isn't really something you have to think about. But this is just of note that we have 7 vowels. A and A are always short, and A and O, or sorry, omicron and epsilon are always short, and eta and eta and omicron. I'm getting myself mixed up here. Eta and omega are always long. The rest can either be short or long. But like I said, this won't really matter that much until we get in a few weeks, we'll start looking at accent rules, and that'll become more important. However, something to note is that we have 8 diphthongs, which are 2 vowels put together and they make a new sound. These are important to know just because there are times where you'll see a consonant cluster that is like 2 consonants next to each other, or sorry, 2 vowels next to each other, and you will think maybe in English that they go together, but they will be pronounced separately. So, for example, you won't see in here AE or alpha epsilon. So that would be pronounced instead of like I or something like that, it would be pronounced AE. Um, so the only diphthongs that will really be relevant are these 8. So these are the ones that are most important to note. And when we're reading, you'll see that they come up a lot and you'll get used to them very quickly. So the first one is alpha plus iota, which is pronounced I. Um, and then epsilon iota is A. Um, you can say it if you want. There's no need. Oi is, or sorry, Omicron and iota is oi. And a lot of these will be intuitive because they're the same noises that we would make in English a lot of the time. Um, ow, or sorry, I skipped one. Upsilon plus iota is ui, as in queen. Um, Alpha plus upsilon is ow. Um, uh, Omicron plus upsilon is U. Note that this will sound basically identical to the pronunciation of upsilon alone. They're both U. Um, so which is just the alone U. Um, then the last two are technically diphthongs in that they'll be considered as one syllable. However, they are pronounced technically like as they're one syllable, but when you sound them out, they will sound like two. So, for example, epsilon plus upsilon is eu. So they don't really sound like they flow into each other. It's like eu, but they'll be considered one vowel. And then you have the same version, but with a long E. So eu or eu, whichever one makes you happy. And then something to note is all diphthongs are long. So the same rules as we were talking about with vowel length when it comes to the I, A, E, all that. All of the diphthongs will be long except for oi and I if it's the last two letters. That isn't super relevant right now. And then the last two are not uh, uh, points about letters, but they are important for pronunciation. So the first is breathing marks. If you have, and I'll pull this up, if you have a a vowel at the beginning of the word, it's always going to be marked either with a short, or sorry, a soft breathing mark, which will look like go here. That's I'm in English. It'll look like that. So with an apostrophe. And if it is with a backwards apostrophe, it's ha. So you start it with a rough breathing, which is just an H sound. So for example, if you had this with a soft breathing, you have amartia. But if you see it with a backwards apostrophe, it's hamartia, which is the word for sin with the rough breathing. This applies for any vowel, including diphthongs. So if you have, let's see here, eu, this is just eu. If you have heu, it's heu. So this only occurs at the beginning of a word. So, if you have Adelphos, it'll only be this first one. And if let's say you had a word like Delphos, it just won't have any breathing mark. So this is something that will only be relevant if the word starts with a vowel. However, it will be on every word that starts with a vowel, just for pronunciation's sake. Which means that there's no natural H sound unless you have this breathing mark. So there's no letter that indicates H.
So above you, on that line, just above there.
Yeah.
Where it was,
This one?
yes,
That's the eta, so that's the long E.
right, that's a diphthong that you were talking about on the first part. And that's like, that's an ow.
Yes. Oh, sorry, you mean the one above. Yes. So instead of being how, it would be ow. You're right. Yep. That's an eta.
Eta, okay, so that one,
Mhm.
because it goes the other way, is Heta.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That brings up a good point. So the names of the vowels or of any of the letters, you only say the eta or epsilon when when you're referring to the actual letter. This is actually like a word. This is the definite article, so this is just hey. So you won't say heta. Yeah, exactly. But yes, correct. So this is a great example. This would be aute, not haute, because it has the soft breathing. And then this is hey instead of a because it's a rough breathing. Does that make sense?
It just is one more minutia of
Yeah.
logical
Yeah.
in the sense that you
Yeah.
tell me that's what the rule is, but does it make sense?
Yeah.
Do I know it yet? No.
It'll just take some brute force reading to really get these down, which we'll do in a little bit. But really something also to note is what we're trying to do here is be able to understand what the words are saying. And so, having perfect pronunciation or understanding what every small note is not key to that. I think you'll find that it comes naturally, but it's not something to stress yourself out about. Like if you look at a word, and you know what the word means, but you might not be able to pronounce it exactly, that's not a huge deal because everyone who speaks ancient Greek is dead. So, uh, it's a benefit. No one's going to judge you for your accent or anything like that. Um, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Um, and then a second note, this is one that is even less important. These are, yeah, we'll spend about 3 minutes on it. It will become slightly more important, but still not greatly important later. But it's just, it's good to know what you're looking at. So for accent marks, we'll have three types, and we can see them here. So if there's this little guy here, which is just, I guess, what you would expect from a regular accent, like in other languages, it's called an acute. And I'll say basically every word you see will have an accent. So if we look here, we see each one has one accent, not to be confused with the breathing marks, which are apostrophes. These are just little marks. Um, these tell you where to put the emphasis on a word. So, for example, if I look here, because the accent is on the last syllable, instead of saying oute, I would say oute. Once again, this is something that won't affect your translations greatly or at all. But just to help, it's really there just to help you understand how to pronounce things if you were to. So this would be aute, hey, adalfe, rather than if the accent instead were, let's see, oh, I'm still in Greek. Okay. If the accent were something like, I'm not in Greek. Adelphe, you would pronounce it as Adelphe instead of Adelphe. Um, so that that's what the point of the accents are, and that applies to all of them. However, there are three different types. So the first one is the most common. It's just a little. It goes, I guess from left to right up. That's the acute. Then you have the grave, which is the same thing but inverted. It'll go from left to right. Um, and then the circumflex, which is in typed Greek will look like, let's see if I have an example. Oh, there we go. It'll look like that, a little like horizontal S, I guess. In written Greek, which I imagine you'll never have to look at unless you're looking at like manuscripts, it'll just be like a little hat on it almost. Um, but yes, these are the three different types. Um, the the acute, which is this one, and the grave, which is this one, have the same general meaning. It's just a point of emphasis. The only difference is that if something is the grave is only used in one case, and it's when the accent is on the last syllable of the word, and it's indicating that you should continue. So I have an example here. Here you have aute, hey, adalfe. The accent is on the last syllable, but it's the last word in the sentence. So it's going to get an acute because it's not noting that you should read forward. There's a period there. In the second example, hey, adalfe, ton adelphon, you'll notice that it's a grave because it's telling you keep reading. Yeah. Um, so there's that, and then the uh, uh, the circumflex. Sorry if I didn't say the name of it. The circumflex um, only indicates a long syllable, and that's really all to say about it. I mean, if you read, you can see that there are specific cases for when you use each one. Something to say is that a word longer than three syllables, the accent, and this applies for all accents, can only go on the last three, which are usually called the ultima, penultima, and antepenultima. That's not information that you'll need. So it's there if you want to learn more about Greek accents at any point, but just note that whenever you see any of these three accents, they're indicating where the what part of the word should be emphasized. So aute, he adalphe, ton, adelphon, agapa. So that's really all it's there for. Honestly, when I learned Greek, they did not require that I memorize where the accents went on certain words, or if I were to ever be writing in Greek, I wouldn't be expected to know where to put the accent. The accent rules are really for if you're really into Greek and you want to get a fuller look at the language, but don't. This is something that you really shouldn't stress yourself out about. I mean, this is something that they don't even make college kids know. So don't worry too much about it, but just know it's there for emphasis. That is it for part one. So congratulations. We will now look at part two only to look at the vocab so that we can read some words. And then we will go down and look at some sentences so we can get used to the alphabet a little bit more. Before I move on, are there any questions about that? Right on. Okay, so can everyone see the part two vocabulary? Great. Okay, so I'll read it, and then you can repeat it. So akuo, and if I'll try to supply some English cognates where I can. So this means to hear. When you're looking at dictionary entries or what's listed here, for verbs specifically, it will always be the first person singular. So for this, akuo literally means I hear. But the general form is this is the word for hearing. So we get acoustics from this, if that makes sense. The next one is blepo. Blepo. So we have a beta, so a beta. Yep. And then the next one is just the short e. Then pi, so blep. And then the omega there is a long O, so we can say blepo. And then if we look at the first one, just to note some features of it, you see that we have the alpha, so with a so this, if we look back, this is the soft breathing mark, so this will just be ah. If it's the other way, it'll be ha. So we have akuo. And you'll note that a feature of the first singular, so I here, instead of like you or he, is the long O. So that's one that you'll see a lot. So akuo, blepo. The next one we have starting with a gamma, so g, gnosko, ko. We have the omega at the end of each of these. I believe for almost all of them because this is the verbs. Yep. Oh, sorry, gnosko. Mhm. Sorry. Yeah, so gnosko. The next one also starts with a gamma. So we have a gamma, and then note that, yep, the next one's a rho. So we'll go grapho. So this one has the f sound in it, like graphic or geography. So grapho. And then we have didasco. So this one also has the sigma and the kappa. So sk. So didasco is to teach. Sorry, I should be saying the definition. So blepo is to see. Gnosko is to know, like gnosis, if you're familiar with like Gnostics and stuff like that. Grapho, and that is to write. And then we have didasco, to teach, like didactic. The next one has the theta, so thelo. And then moving on to the right. Oh, sorry, and that one is to wish or desire. So it's a, can't think of a word that comes from that right now, but if one comes to me, I'll say it. Kai. So this is a very common one. It's just the conjunction and. Note that this has the alpha iota diphthong, so chi. The next one is very common, Lego, like the little building blocks. This one's to say or to speak or to tell. This one, all of the ologies comes from this, but it comes from the noun form of logos, which comes from Lego. Okay, the next one, luo. This is a short one. And note that this is what I'm talking about, where we have two vowels right next to each other, the u and the o. But because they're not one of the listed diphthongs, we're going to pronounce them separately. So we wouldn't try to make it like luo or something like that. It'll be separate, luo. The next one, if we look here, yeah. So that's something also to note is that breathing, if the emphasis is on the beginning of the word and the beginning is with a vowel, you can sometimes have both an accent and a breathing mark. So this one has the rough breathing, so we're going to go haughty. And So we have the rough breathing mark there. So we know that it's going to start with a h, right? So we have the ha, then the next letter is a t. So we have, and then we have an iota. So ha, t. This one's very common. It sets off certain clauses. So you'll often have like Lego hati. So I say that, or you can just have hati as a way to say because. You'll see it in a lot of different instances. Then the next one has three different forms. U, uk, or uch. These are you'll see them. There are reasons why each one is used. So, for example, u will be used if the word after that starts with a consonant. So you would have like thello, I do not wish. Or you can have if it begins with a a vowel with a soft breathing, so like an ah or an eh, it would be ook. I don't know, like ook agape. And if it begins with or the next letter begins with a vowel that has a rough breathing, it would be so hamartia or something like that. Just this isn't something you have to know. Just memorize the different forms so that you're not unfamiliar when you see a different combination of them. But this is just the basic adverb not. So this will usually go with verbs. So thello is I wish. If you have thello, it's I do not wish. And then the last one, this one is maybe a little bit more difficult to pronounce just because it has a diphthong followed by another vowel, but it's pisteuo. If we see we have that diphthong that doesn't really sound like a diphthong. So we have pisteuo. There, I separated the diphthong, but pisteuo, and this is to believe, like epistemology. I take that back. That comes from a different root. But yeah, so pisteuo. Sorry. So if we go back, the pi just makes the p sound. Yep. And the one that looks like a trident, that makes the ps sound.
Right, that was mixed up on which one. Yeah, so that, all right. Yeah, then I can get the PIS sound because the sigma.
Okay, so those are our vocab words.
Let me get the, all right, so the E. Hold on. Yeah, the EV is a diphthong.
Yes.
Diphthong, and that's what I'm looking at, so it's an U. It's an EU, again.
Yeah. So Yeah, so AUO. Um, it's sort of a mouthful, and you'll notice that a lot in Greek. They like putting weird things together. They have weird consonant clusters, weird vowel clusters. Um,
I'm just trying to get my ear around this.
mhm.
So it's pista, and then what's the E?
So yeah, you'll have pist, and then the EU is eu, or eu. Yeah, I guess however you want to say it.
And then an O on it, so AUO.
Yep. So pisteuo. Yeah. Um, that's something too is they don't form words like we form them, so they're a little unfamiliar to look at. Um, I think what I can do now is I will put up, I'll show some sentences, and you guys can have your alphabets out to consult them. Yeah, yeah. That way you don't have to flip back and forth. You can just look at the screen when you want to look at the words, and then you can consult that if you see one that doesn't immediately strike you. Um, so the first one here, the number one on the lesson two, I'll have it up here for you if you want to look at the alphabet. Um, so can you guys see that okay? Is that big enough, or should I make it bigger?
It's on our sheet, so, and you got a sheet in front of you, so.
Okay.
So I think
Okay. So the first one here, what do you think it's, or should I say it first for you guys? I don't want to move too quickly. Okay. Uh, very, very, very close. The last one is the one that looks like a V is an N sound. Um, uh, the U sound will look more like a U, and then the one that looks like a V will be N. But you were super close. Gnoskamen. Uh, yep, perfect. Um, And that's something you'll hear a lot is like you'll hear me say something like gnoskamen to indicate a difference between the long O and the short O. A lot of people make no distinction. So that's totally fine to say gnoskomen if that sounds more natural to you. Um, but yes, that's very good. So we have the little swoop. I never know how to describe it. The gamma makes the g sound at the beginning. So we have gin, Gin. Then we have the long O, which is accented. So gino. Um, and then we have yep, so ginosk, and then amen at the very end. So ginoskamen, and then the next one. Mhm,
that's got both the accents on it.
mhm. So note the breathing mark. Yep, there you go. Hati, very nice. Mhm. Very nice.
Right now, the blue.
Okay, so yes, very good. Pisteuete. Can everyone see that? Very nice. Kai. Yep, very nice. And then the last one. Yeah, the very close. So this is the last syllable there, the A is another diphthong. So this one will be didaskein.
But then you're putting the accent on the
Sorry, I was saying that to emphasize what the diphthong was, but yeah, it would be didaskein if you want to say it with the accent. Um, but yes, that wasn't too bad. It was pretty good. That was great. It was great. Um, and then I guess you guys, well, no, we won't translate. Um, so does anyone want to? Yes, yes. So this one, Gnoskamen, and this is something that hopefully we'll get the chance to look at later, but we'll go at whatever speed we need to. This amen ending. So if we look up at the beginning, we see go way up. Gnosko meant I know, and then Gnoskamen is going to mean we know. So we have it's sort of like I was gonna say it's like Latin or it's like Spanish, like amos, I suppose. Um, but yes, so Gnoskamen is we know, and then Hati is as you said that. So Gnoskamen Hati, we know that. Um, does anyone remember what pisteuo means? I didn't have a good example for it. This is so pisteuo means to believe. So when you have ete, this is also like the Romance languages in like Latin. Ete is you plural. So gnoskomen hoti, we know that. Pisteu ete is you believe, and then kai is the conjunction. So um, we know that you believe, and thelete from Thello, you believe and you wish. And then didaskein is an infinitive, which often goes with verbs like wishing and stuff like that. So gnoskomen hate pisteuete kai thelete didaskein is we know that you believe and you wish to teach. Yes. Yes, that might not have been one that I said the meaning of, but they should all be listed there. Mhm. And there's multiple words to teach. In fact, the the word that I'll use as like the paradigms when I'm showing the different conjugations is paideuo, which also means to teach. Um, this is something that you would have to look in like a dictionary to see what the precise meaning of it is. Um,
To help us do the lesson.
exactly. In fact, there's no sentence here that will not include the vocabulary that we went over. So you can always consult the vocabulary and you should be able to find every single word. Ideally, basically everything here can be consulted within the same packet. So um, you'll have all the conjugations as well in lesson two. Yeah, we're just getting used to the alphabet. I'll once we're done with that, I'll go over the different conjugations of the verbs and stuff like that. So we're skipping over a little bit here just to read some Greek. Um, let's see here. We won't do that yet.
Here and I see that sister writes or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was able to figure out what that kind of meant,
Mhm.
but my tongue is not getting there yet.
You know, I have to say I am not the best at pronouncing them either, just because, when you're mainly reading a language, your head gets used to looking at the symbols, but because you're not actively speaking it, it's hard to. So um I it will come naturally speaking it once you keep reading, believe me. But what the fact that you were able to translate that is wonderful. This is really what we're aiming for. So
Because see brother up there.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the reason, sorry, to explain myself, the reason why I have yeah, the reason why Adelphos is given and Adelphe isn't, like the reason why I have that listed at lesson two is just because Adelphos isn't a vocab word, but they're included in some of the sentences, so I just supplied that. But yeah, that's the only reason why I did that. But yeah, Adelphe, we'll learn that ending, the eta ending is a signifier of the feminine, and os is the signifier of the masculine.
So that's close, but not quite.
Exactly. This is why the name Jesus, we read it as Jesus, is because originally it would have been like Yeshua, or just Yeshu, but when it becomes a Greek word, because the signifier of the masculine often has an S at the end of it, they take Yesu and make it Jesus. So that's where we get like Jesus and other names like that. It helps them decline the words, which we'll look at later. But that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Does everyone know how to pronounce and know what number 2 means?
So like station.
Mhm.
So. And here I get the, oh, with the V accent one again, and I keep mixing up, and it ends with an ooh.
Yeah.
Or oh. So,
Yeah.
I'm not there yet with the sound.
Something that's helpful, and obviously this is sort of like an edge case, but something that is helpful in knowing that it makes a vowel sound and not like a v or a n, is just the fact that it's accented, because only vowels can be accented. So here you have akuo. If it were a n or a v, you couldn't have it accented. So the fact that there's a little accent over it means it has to be a vowel.
Say that again.
Akuo.
And then, here we go again with the bowl. Come on, you guys. Lift out. Lift out.
Mhm.
Bow, and then hate, and then adela.
So it looks like an O, but it has that little like cross in it. Yep, exactly. Hmm. Yeah. This is one of those diphthongs. So the last two letters are going to combine and just say A. Yep.
So that's the writing, so it's like graphic and
Hmm.
so.
And then, okay, so the meaning for this one you said. So I hear and I see that sister writes. Yeah. Oftentimes we'll look at the articles um later, but so like you would expect like hey Adalphe if it were to be the sister. But there are a lot of times where Greek doesn't use an article where you would expect one in English. So when you're translating, because you could see that like that sister writes sounds a little rough, you can say a sister writes, or you can say the sister writes. Um, in fact, there's a lot of cases where there will be an implied like my or his or something like that. So you have a lot of options to translate it. Um, I would probably either go a sister or my sister, but just to make it sound nice in English, you can have some liberty with translation. Um, there is a word. Usually it's a it's just the pronoun in the genitive case, and we'll look at the cases in a minute. But you said you have Latin experience. There you go. So you know that they have the different cases like genitive and stuff like that. Or there's also a an adjective that they have as well, but it's more common that you'll see the pronoun. But that's for I think in a few weeks, so you have some time to prepare for that. Um, but usually if you would expect one and there's not one, you supply whatever the subject is as the possessor. So for example, here akuo is I see, so you would expect it to be I see my sister if one isn't there. Um, but also
But you would say you're.
you wouldn't say, yeah, you would expect there to be something if it was yours. Yeah. Yeah. So if it's not there, you would expect it to be whatever the subject of the main verb is. Um, Otherwise, it would be a bit of a reach. I mean, context-wise, it could be your, but it would be very unlikely that you wouldn't see that there. Which one? Oh, okay. Um,
Not whatever the.
yeah, I will say this sentence is a bit strange. This is coming from Croy's A Primer of Biblical Greek, and one thing that he likes to do is put sentences that don't really make a whole lot of sense. So like, for example, yeah, this means, you know, you say that a brother loosened or loosens or something like that, or like is destroying. Luo can mean a lot of different things. So if something doesn't immediately make sense to you, just know that that is not a sign that it's not correct. Um, so this one, for example, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
What the verb ending, it's say that, what is the verb ending, with kind of the
Um, yeah, so ace is the second singular. So just you say. And then Lu A is the second or sorry, the third singular. This is something this we're doing right now. I'm not expecting you guys to translate anything. This is just to get familiar with the Greek sounds. So trust me, we will look more in depth at the actual conjugations of the verbs in a little bit. But if you really, this is to get used to the sounds. Um,
Now read sentence three.
in Greek.
Yes.
Okay. So the first one is leges. Mhm. Yep, hati. And then this one's gonna be, yep, adelphos or adelphos, whichever one you want. So uh, this one will have the same sound ending as the first word with the a, so it's lue. Yep.
Down. Nothing's really said who. This to. I stay woman is the last one, but that's close to. Yeah, this is.
Yep. So
Mr.
yep. So
Hey, you're awfully quiet, are you sure? Come around the stool. The omen is we.
yes, exactly. So this one is, um, and this it's helpful to some degree to split off what is part of the root of the verb and what's the ending. So here, if you if we go back to the vocab for part two, you have akuo, blepo, ginosko, grapho. If you cut off the last letter there, the o, that's going to be the root of the verb, which everything else is going to be attached to. So if you get used to making the sound of the root, then you just have to do that plus the ending. So it would be aku and then whatever ending is on there, blep and whatever ending is on there. Um, mhm. Yes.
But I don't. You get to that far, and then I hit that.
Yeah, that's one of the tricky diphthongs that just you have to just put the two letters together. So pisteu and then pisteu and then amen. And then you can just put those two together. So pisteu amen or pisteu omen, if that sounds more natural.
Yeah, the E, it's a diphthong with two sounds. The E and the, yeah, it's the two added together. The oops word is two steps. Yeah,
So it's not ivory, that's like a different,
yeah,
like we or.
Yes.
they or.
right.
Exactly.
What is it?
Oh yes. So this pisteu is the yes, and then the ending amen is specifically it's the signifier that it means we. So it's like conjugating verbs in like I mean basically any language except English, like Spanish or French or anything like that. So the subject is indicated in the actual verb. Um, if that makes sense. So legace, for example, leg or which comes from Lego, which is I say, legace. The ace indicates that it's you, so you say. Um, would you like to keep reading, or do you think it would provide more clarity if we went through the verbal system? Because I think maybe the different conjugations might be tripping people up a little bit.
See the demo. I hear, I see, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, remember we're not necessarily trying to translate right now. The focus is mainly on getting the sounds down. So don't try to think too much exactly on what these things mean, so much as how to say them. I know it's tempting, but um, you know what? Maybe if I give you guys one that you guys don't know the words for, um, it'll stop you guys from trying to translate it. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. So look up here, and you guys can have your alphabets out if you want to consult the words meaning. But see, this is exciting because this is a verse of the actual of the New Testament. So let's look at the first word here. So note that it starts with a vowel and it has a soft breathing, so we're not going to make an H sound. So. Mhm. And then so this one that looks like an N with the lengthened right side is an A. Mhm.
It's S, yeah, because it's S, I'm not.
It's A or E. I say A. I know that it's listed there as E, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. The long word would be.
mhm.
Okay, your rows.
So this is so we have the R and the Ch next to each other, so we'll have arche or arche, um, which is where we get like archaic from. This is the word for beginning. Um, so arche or arche if you don't want to say um the ch. And then this is a better one. Um, yep. Yep. So arche two. Um, maybe let's skip over this next one. Uh, we'll return to it. It's where we get the word like evangelizer from. But the next one, he's pretty sorry, this is two words, but it's his yeah. Mm-hmm.
If the M is like that, why could the N be like that? Would make it so much sense.
Yeah. And what makes it more confusing is that the capital N in Greek looks identical to the capital N in English, so you would expect the lowercase. Yeah. Um, so if we sound that out, we have the yep. Mhm. So we have the E. And there's no tau. I believe there is listed there's two. There's the
Yeah.
pit or police. Yeah. So it can sound like both. Typically, when it's at the beginning of a word, yeah.
And then you said the, eta is either E or like teen, or you say, or it could be an A.
Yeah. And a good reason why I pronounce it as A is see here. If we pronounce both of these as E, you would have EE. So
That'd be Isu.
yeah. But that was good. That was good. Yeah, but if you yep, so E A Su. Does that yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, look and see, maybe that will give you a clue as to what the next word is. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And then the two, U would be at the end,
Hmm.
so. So say the first part.
So the first one is yeah, so Iesu and then the priest is Christu. Mhm. Then the next one the next one
All right.
the next one, so note that the U and I the is a diphthong, so it'll make one sound. And then note that it has a rough breathing mark. So it'll start with a H sound.
Oh, okay, no, that's.
Yeah. I'll say this one because this one is like super weird looking. It's common because it's the word for sun. I'm not supposed to translate. Yes. It's hui u. Hui u. Yeah. Hui u. Sorry, I'm getting the just
That's.
yeah, yeah. The UI is the we sound. So hui u. This is just two diphthongs next to each other, which makes it a little weird. Yeah.
Struggle with something that looks like a B and making it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they,
Yes, exactly.
Son of God.
Hmm. So this is no. This is a great point. What and we'll look at this later when we get to the case system. Um,
They don't have,
they don't have a word for of because it's indicated in the ending. So the normal form of theu is theos, um, and the root of it is the, and then different endings can indicate different meanings. So theos is if God were the subject, so theos did something. If it's what's called genitive, which indicates that it's possession, it would be theu. Um, so if you have like gosh, like doxa theu, it would be the glory of God.
Okay.
If
I
that makes
know.
sense.
I know absolutely no Latin, but
Yeah.
I know that Latin does that type of
Mhm.
thing.
It's called
Maybe.
it's called being an inflected language, which is just the idea that the nouns have different can inflect as in it has different endings, and yeah. And what makes that a little different from English is that means that you can play around with the order of the words a little bit. So for example, in English, you have to have generally a strict, if you want to say like I hit him, it would need you can't say I him hit or him hit I. It needs to be in a specific order to show what's the relationship between the nouns and the verbs. That doesn't necessarily exist in Greek because the endings will indicate what the meaning is. So you could have something like I him hit, because you would know based on the endings what is the subject and what's the object. There's still some resemblance of this in English. For example, you say who if it's the subject and whom if it's the object. It's basically like that, except every word is like that. So um, you'll get used to it, and the endings are relatively regular. So the more you see it, the more you'll get used to it. And it's also helpful that they have a K system because it means that you'll be seeing a lot of the same letters again and again and again, and you'll see the same. So like ooh, for example, is something. I mean, gosh, every single word except the first one ends in oo, just because they're all in some way or another a genitive. So it's helpful for memorizing certain forms.
So would you read that sentence?
Yes, so arche, tu evangeliu, Iesu Christu, hui, huiu, theu. So you hear a lot of oohs there. Um, yes, yes. So this is the opening of the Gospel of Mark. So this is arche, is the beginning. Tu evangeliu is literally the beginning of the good news, or just the evangelium, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, Son of God. Huiu Theu is probably actually not original, was then added later by a scribe, but it's in a lot of manuscripts, so I kept it. Note, this is something that might be more relevant once we actually are a little bit more familiarized with the alphabet. But note here that we have a double gamma, and I didn't say uwagelium or iwageliu. If you have two gammas next to each other, the first one's pronounced like a n. So
No.
yeah, it's just So it's evangeliu instead of iwageliu. But this is something that will, it also won't affect your ability to read it in your head and like understand what it means. But just note that when you're reading something like that, there's no g sound. It's ng. In fact, that's if we see here angeliu, this is where we get the word for angel. Angelos is Aggelos, but it's pronounced ng, and it means like messenger. But yeah, do we want to try to pronounce this one by ourselves? It, don't skip over the I there. It's right. Yep. So evangeliu.
Say L, say L.
Sorry. It's the eu sound. Which is also something you'll see a lot because eu, just that form, is attached to a lot of words to just mean good. So angelion is like news or message. Eu makes it the good news. It's where we get like words like euphony, like good sound, or you get the point. There you go. Yeah, a good death is what that literally means. Yeah, I was trying to avoid that example, but yes. No, whatever helps, whatever helps. Um,
Our age.
but yeah, so you'll see a lot of the AUs around. They're always lurking. And it always means something like good. It can also stand on its own, just AU as an adverb, like doing something well. Okay, so there's that. Let me see. Oh, yeah. We can read this one, which is all this is from Revelation. But just try to sound that out first. Yep. It's capital, but it just looks like the epsilon, like the backwards three. So you were right when you said eh.
That's the G
Yep.
sound.
Mhm.
That's
Ego.
Yep.
ego.
Very good. This is just so remember, mu is the name of the letter. It just makes the m sound. So, yep. So Amy, or yeah. Um, and ego Amy. Can we guess what ego means, or like ego? It's a pronoun. So this just means I. Um, yeah. So like I is in me, not yeah. So ego Amy means I am. Um, it's specifically, maybe not in this context, but generally, like when Jesus says something like before Abraham was, I am. He uses ego eimi. This is specifically like significant because obviously when God reveals his name to Moses, he says, I am in Hebrew. And then in the Greek translation, it's translated as ego eimi. So oftentimes when he's saying this, it has more significance than just I am, which it can mean. It can also mean something like, I am as in I am God. Um, so especially in the before Abraham was ego eimi is significant. So that's always something to look out for. Um, so yeah, ego eimi. Mhm. Um, Sorry, yeah, this is just this isn't a diphthong, so it's just and it's a short o, so you can say to ta either one, but the u sound is reserved for the u and the ou, so this is just yeah ta to. Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. And so normally this would just like if you regularly just saw this letter, it wouldn't be omega, it would be o, but given the context, we can say omega.
so, yeah, would say the name of the letter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Close. Remember, the pi looks like the little table. This, what looks like a P in Greek, is a rho, an R sound. Yep. Can you say that again? Yep. Kurios. Yep. And then we've seen this one. Mhm. Yeah. So this is mhm. So remember um the Omicron, and then it has the rough breathing, so it wouldn't be ah, but ha. Exactly. So ha theos. And this will be something that we'll see later, but the ha is the definite article. Um, Now, something to note is that we sort of do the opposite in English, where if we were to say the God or a God, it sounds like we're talking about not God, God. In Greek, to say God without the article, when we mean like, the very God, we will see it with the article. So ha theos, we can translate without the article to get the sense of God. Um, so we have ego eimi ta alpha kai ta omega lege kurias ha theos. Um, if you've seen like when you're sometimes it's included in like hymns, you see like Kyrie, like Kyrie. That comes from kurios. Usually when you're transcribing uh, uh, the u sound, the upsilon in English, like when you're doing transliteration. In English, you'll have it as a y instead of a u because in modern Greek it's pronounced e. So for example, psuche means like spirit or like soul. Um, if you see it written out in English, you have psyche with a y sound instead. So just this is Lord. So like when you say like Kyrie and like worship or during hymns, it means it's and the e ending instead of like kurios is the vocative, so it's like calling out to the Lord. So Kyrie is literally like oh Lord, from kurios, which I have written down here, it just means Lord. So kurios hatheos is sort of like just a common idiom for God the Lord or God Lord. It's also what the tetragrammaton is translated as. So if you see Yahweh in the Old Testament, usually when it's translated into Greek, it's translated as Kurios because Yahweh, when the Jewish scribes are avoiding saying Yahweh, they'll have it as Adonai, which means my Lord. So when they're translating, it'll be Kurios instead of Yahweh, anything like that. So to say this one again, ego eimi, ta alpha kai ta omega, lege Kurios ha theos. Yeah, I got you. So the first one, it's hard to see because I have the quote here, but it's the soft breathing. So go with the long O. Then here we have a diphthong, which makes the A sound. So a me. Then short O ta. Then here we have accented at the beginning and soft breathing. So alpha. And if it were with a rough breathing, we would say halpha. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, really just because this is alpha, we're translating the other one as omega, but otherwise, I mean, you could very well just say alpha chi ta o. Mhm. Then lege, so we have a short e and then a diphthong d. Um, and then remember this is a u that makes an u sound, so kurios. And then this is just an ah, but because it has the rough breathing, it's ha. And then theos. Note that because these aren't one of the listed diphthongs, we're pronouncing the vowels separately. So theos. And then you can also see that because this S is at the end of the sentence, it's the open sigma and not the closed. Which is helpful because it looks more like an English S. Yeah. So there's that. So actually the th isn't capitalized. It just looks capitalized because it's a big letter. If it were to be capitalized, it would look like that.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it means business. Yeah. Luckily I mean they both look relatively similar. They're both like the circle with the thing in the middle.
Which would make it even more.
Okay. We'll save hmm. Do you want to read another sentence from the Bible? I have one more from Corinthians. Given time, we'll do this one and then maybe we'll look at lesson 2 or sorry, part 2. Yep, good. Very good, Mene. Yeah.
And then this to this
So let's just take out the O and you've got it. Yep, pistis. There's no vowel in between L and P, so just that was perfect, but just without the alpha. Yep. Yeah. So L, yep, Elpis, exactly. Yep. Agape. So you got it with the long E sound, agape.
It's TR. Yeah.
Remember that the row is just the name of it and it's just Ra. So Tria. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Say it again. Halta, halta.
Yep, tauta, because you can see this is one of our diphthongs, the ow. So tauta. This is actually, I don't think we've seen a zeta yet in our sentences, so this will be good. Good, but remember that the omega makes a, yep, perfect.
What?
The omega here is the long O sound, so
The end is-
this is the N. Yep, so meson. The close. It's the alpha upsilon that makes the ow sound. The OU makes the same as just a regular U, so oo. So, yep, two tone, perfect. Yep, agape, perfect. And then the beginning is just the A sound with a rough breathing mark. Yep. Yep.
We just.
So there we go. So hey agape, or sorry, agape. So putting it all together, we have nuni, demene, pistis, elpis, agape, tatria tauta. We're all there. Meson de tuton, hey agape. This is 1 Corinthians 13:13. Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's what this ending says. Actually, Paul sort of messed it up a little bit. So meson is the a comparative of great. So literally, it's greater than these is love, but you would expect greatest, which would be malista. So he had a little bit of trouble there, but the point is still the same. So yeah, so nuni is now, and de is just a common way to say and. So and now mene is where we get the word remain, so we can literally translate as remains. So now pistis, elpis, agape, which is faith, hope, and love. So pistis, elpis, agape remains. And then it's sort of like a, this is then referencing the pistis, elpis, agape. It says tatria tauta, which is these three things. Tria, like Spanish or most other languages, like triple. Then yeah, meson de tuton, hey agape. So greatest of these is love. And this is something we'll look into, but it's just interesting to note that in Greek, so this is literally and greatest of these love. So in Greek, you don't need, you can have verbalist sentences if you're just saying this is that. You don't need to have the is. You can have it, and it's actually much more common in New Testament Greek than in like ancient, like Attic Greek to include the verb is, but it's not necessary. So here, literally just love the greatest of these, and you can supply an is. But we'll see that come up a lot. Like here, for example, you see ego, Amy, so they're including Amy's the verb, so they include it. They could just say ego to alpha, chi to omega if they wanted to. But later forms of Greek, like the New Testament, normally like to include the verb, just to be totally clear. Okay, so we're getting there with the alphabet, which is very nice. And you'll have plenty of time to get used to it, but it seems like what you guys are at least doing well at seeing words and sort of recognizing them. Even if the exact sounds they make aren't particularly familiar. We will have plenty of time to do that. But now we can move on with our remaining time to look at the verbal system, and maybe we'll dip our toes in the noun system. But let's start with the verbs. So we read through the vocabulary. So now I'm just going to say a little bit about the verbal system, and then we'll look at the way that they're conjugated. So we're done looking at Greek letters for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes while I explain the verbal system. So in English, normally what we have is just a basic form of the word and, maybe a couple other ones. So, and then we add things to it. So for example, if we have do, we can say I do, you do, we do. We just add the pronoun to each one. And then we can do things like I am doing to indicate the present tense. And then we can do I was doing to indicate the past tense. And if we want to do something more like future, I will do, maybe I should do if we want to indicate like the mood of something. In Greek, all of this is going to be packed into the verb. So, we have a specific form for I should do versus, I or he will do, versus it has been done. All of these are just going to be one word in Greek. And it's going to be different endings and prefixes and changes to the root that are going to indicate this, um, which makes for a very concise language. There's a lot that can be compacted in one word. Um, it also makes it a little bit more complicated. So we're going to be spending time looking at each individual like system separately. But what you'll note is that oftentimes there are just subtle changes to things, but the endings and certain paradigms, forms will become very familiar. So, for example, you know, uh, the difference between pisteuo, I believe, and I will believe, is just an adding of a sigma at the end of the root. So pisteuo is I believe, pisteuso is I will believe, and the endings are the exact same for all for the future. So all this just to say it is a lot, but there's also a lot of similarities in all of the forms, and you'll see that as we go on. But right now we're just doing the present. So there are six things, uh, or sorry, not six things, five things that are indicated by the Greek verb that is tense. So this will be like I am, I will, I was, I have been, I did, all these sorts of things. There's voice, uh, which we'll look at a little bit more, but this is like the difference between, I hit somebody and I was hit by somebody. Um, um, Except Greek has another one called the middle, which we'll look at in a minute. Number, so obviously there's a distinction between like I and we, you or you plural, he or they. Um, and then, oh, sorry, I skipped over one. Mood. Mood is one that might not be familiar to you immediately, but this is the difference between, or the basic idea of mood is, um, I have it here, the way the action is being asserted by the writer. So what this means is, um, the difference between a simple assertion, which is called the indicative, so he walked, or maybe it's a question, will he walk? Or maybe I'm not sure, so I use what's called the subjunctive, which is like a maybe, maybe not. So like he should walk, but I don't know if he will. Or a common one, a command, so which is called the imperative. So walk. Um,
I'm trying to follow here, so their verbs are use these endings more often. I think in English, the only verb we used was subjunctive is if I were going, you said
mhm,
were,
mhm.
I would give you a ride.
Exactly. Yeah. So
But I think that's the only one we,
yeah, there's subtle indications. English is complicated with the subjunctive. Most other languages have a more fleshed out system. And really, in other languages that aren't English, the subjunctive indicates really anything that isn't like either like super likely to happen. Yeah, exactly. So wishes, things that are possibilities, things. In fact, oftentimes indirect speech can be in the subjunctive or optative, which is related to the subjunctive, to just indicate some amount of uncertainty. So in English, for example, should is often used as a way to indicate the subjunctive because it's like, if I should do something, it's not saying that I will do it or that I am doing it or that I had done it. It's saying, you know, it would be best if I did or something like that. But it's not indicating a certain action that's happening. Um, so yeah, the subjunctive is a little touchy, and we'll see that there are a lot of different uses in Greek. But yeah, the definition of subjunctive in English and in Greek aren't always the same, and we'll see that. But just to note that these are the different types of mood. And then lastly, we have number, like I said, and then person, so it indicates the difference between I or you or he. Um, those are the different types. Tenses, they have a few different ones that aren't necessarily familiar in English. Um, so there's the present tense, which is in Greek, the present can either indicate present one-time action or present continual action. So the difference between, I go versus I am going, that's the present tense. They have an imperfect, which is continuous past action. So not I walked, but I was walking. It's something that I was doing for a length of time. The future is exactly like the future in English. Um, One called the aorist, which is what we will usually translate as just being simple past. So I have here I went, so just a one-time action, or I did this. Um, Perfect, which is similar to the English perfect. This is a little complicated, but if you're translating something, it's best to just translate it as I have done something. Um, it's at this point in Greek, the perfect and the aorist have sort of merged to mean the same thing, just like a simple past tense. And then the pluperfect, which is um, past tense in the past. So like after I had done this, I did this. The had done would be in the pluperfect. Um, the pluperfect is basically non-existent by the time of New Testament Greek. The perfect is also relatively uncommon, but the pluperfect is basically gone. I think there's maybe like 10 or so in all of the New Testament, which is why there's like maybe like half a page in the textbook dedicated to it. It might not even be something we cover just because you'll never see it. Um, and you'll find that the perfect is sort of, you can tell what a perfect is because it's very a unique form. So seeing the pluperfect wouldn't be um, that weird. But just to note, these are the original six tenses that we have in Greek. Oh yeah, I already have here written that the pluperfect is basically gone. Um, Voice, something to note is that Greek has three voices instead of the English two. So where we can distinguish between the active and passive, that is, I picked the coffee cup, I picked up the coffee. Uh, I am the subject and I'm doing the action, whereas the coffee was picked up. Um, the subject is the receiver of the action. In Greek, they have a third one, which is called the middle voice. This indicates action that one is doing for oneself or to oneself. So I have here, like, yeah, so like he washed their feet, present. The subject is doing the action. Or sorry, not present, active. Then you have passive, his feet were washed. The subject, his feet, is receiving the action. But then you have the middle voice, which would be something like he washed his own feet, um, something like that. So it's action that you're doing to yourself.
So they talk themselves in third person?
So this would be like if you were telling a story. Um, so you can say that in Greek too. What's indicated here is like you could be telling a story and say he washed his feet. Like it doesn't have to be yourself. What it's indicating is that whatever the verb is happening to the subject by the subject. Does that make sense? So for example, the word to walk is in the middle. We would translate that as just I walked. In Greek, it's also we would translate it as I walked, but it's in the middle because you're walking and you're moving yourself. So the idea of the middle is that it doesn't take an object per se, like it's not like he walked somebody. That would be in the active because you're doing something to somebody else. But when you're walking, it's typically only affecting you, so it would be in the middle. And we'll see it. It's uh, kind of not as common by the time of the New Testament, as you'll find a lot of the more complicated forms are. Um, but there's a little bit of nuance, but that's not something we're dealing with today or in a little bit. So don't get too caught up on it. But yeah, the idea is generally just it's something that's happening to the advantage or disadvantage of yourself. Mood we already talked about, and I won't give it too much attention just because it'll be explained more fully later. But you can read that on your own if you want. And then person or number, this is the big thing. So plural versus singular is indicated, and then also the three persons, I, you, he, she, they, are also indicated in the verb. So now, back to Greek, we can look at the different inflections. So something to note is that paideu, so if we go to the first singular, which is listed here, I teach, if we chop off the O, that's what's going to give us the root of the verb that we're going to attach all the endings to. This is for what's called the passive, or sorry, the present active indicative. So this is just I blank. I do, I walk, I teach. It's just something that's happening in the present, and it's just an assertion. So to say I teach, which is the first singular, we have paideuo. The second person, you teach, paideu ace. Third person, paideu a. And then so that's I, you, he, she. And then we have, for the plural, paideu amen, which is we teach. Paideu ete, which is you teach, you in the plural. And then paideu usi, or you can have usin if the next word starts with a vowel. But so what you really want to memorize isn't necessarily the full word, but that it goes o, ace, a, amen, ete, usi. And this will attach to any of the verbs listed in the vocab. So if we go to akuo, it would be akuo, akues, akue, aku amen, akuete, akuusi. So here we go. So
there's no gender difference.
correct. It's not like Hebrew. It just indicates the person and number. So I, you, he, she, but it won't indicate gender, which is nice because it means there are less forms. And it's also not super necessary because the nouns will indicate the gender. So there's less of a need to indicate it via the verb. Although you would rely on context for I or you because those the pronouns don't have gender. So repeat after me. Paideuo. Sorry, I'm saying it a little fast. Paideuo. Perfect. So paideuo is I teach. So the O ending is I. That's confusing. The O ending is an indicative of the first singular. Then we have paideu ace. Perfect. So the ace ending is the U, singular. Paideu a. Perfect. So that's he or she teaches. Paideu amen. Beautiful. So the amen there is we. Paideu ete. Perfect. And then paideu usi. Perfect. So the usi ending there. Yeah, that one's hard. The ones that don't have vowels or diphthongs as the endings make it sound a little bit better.
60 years. Yeah, wait a minute, oh, wait, I have to say,
Amas.
mamos, amatis, amant.
Beautiful. There you go. When yeah.
I'm gonna have to pay her to tutor me.
Um, hopefully that's where you'll be with this. We'll get you there. Okay. One last thing, the verb accents I think we probably won't deal with it right now because I don't think you won't be writing in Greek, so you won't need to know where the accents are generally. But just to note, the infinitive, which is something we saw earlier, if you take the verbal stem, which as we talked about is the first singular minus the O, so in the paideuo, it's just paideu. You attach I'll zoom in on it. the EIN or epsilon iota nu. So it would be paideu ain. For luo, luain is the infinitive, which I should say is just translated as like to do something. Um, so and we won't deal with the uses of the infinitive right now because there are a lot, especially in New Testament Greek, there are a lot because um, they're borrowing uses from other languages that use the infinitive. But generally, like you would expect it in the lesson, for example, I think where you're really going to see it is with the word fellow. So, for example, fellow akuane instead of akuo. Fellow akuane is I wish to hear. Fellow blepain, I wish to see. Um, or if you just have blepain on its own, you could have just to see, which can often indicate the idea of like sight. Um, but that's we'll get into that later. But generally, it's going to complete verbs of wishing, sometimes of saying. Lego doesn't take it, so you won't see it there. Really, I think for these sentences, you're only going to see it with theo, or sorry, thello. Um, but just note, yeah, that the form for the infinitive is the verbal stem plus ain, as in ein. Um, okay, so let's go with, I'll have this up. Let's maybe conjugate just out loud. Let me just pick one. We'll do thello. So we have thello as I wish. Then we have as the second singular, thel ace. And then what would the third singular be? Yep, so thel o, thel ace, thel a. Then the plural, thel for we, thel amen. Yep. Thel ete. The OU is going to be the oo sound. Yep, so thel usi. So thelo, theles, thele, thelamen, thelete, thelusi. And like I said, for the usi, you might see it with an usin instead of usi. That's just so that you can avoid having one word ending with a vowel and the other picking up with it. So in the same way that we had u versus uk, to say like uk estin or u blepo, you'll have if paideusi is followed by, I don't know, paideusi agapein, it'll be paideusin agapein. That way you're not having an e-a right next to each other, which is funny because they don't really care about that in the words. But between words, they try to create a consonant to separate them, which makes sense because originally Greek was written continuously with no spaces. So having something like that to denote the beginning of a new word is helpful. But yeah, you'll see either form. Just note that there's a reason for that, but it connotates the same thing. Here, I'll stay silent. Why don't you guys give me the conjugation of Lego?
Lego, legace, lega, lego, omen, but already.
Yep, you can say omen if you want, but yeah, amen.
Legate, legusi.
That was beautiful. One thing, the third singular is the A sound because it's the diphthong EI, so lege. But great. Yep. Lego, legace, lege, legamen, legete, legusi. Okay, okay. So we have Lego, legace, lege. So that's I, you, he, or I, you, she. And then in the plural, legamen, legete, legusi. So we, you plural, they. Which is the end of this section. So now we can look at the sentences. And we'll just do this for practice reading, but we'll go through the sentences at the beginning of the next class to see if we can translate them. Okay, so we already did the first three, so let's go to, there we go. Oh, and we have an infinitive. Okay, so we can go to number 4. Oh.
Are we, saying them or we translating?
Let's start with saying them and then we can translate. But if in your head you're sort of subconsciously translating, that's also fine. Yep, so thele. Yep. Mhm. Mhm. Yep, perfect. Mhm. Yes, that was great. See if there's, oh, yes, some very close. Just note the K in there, so gnosko. Um, so a couple things to note here. One, this is just something orthography wise. If you look at the thing that looks like a semicolon, in Greek, when you see printed Greek, what looks like a semicolon is a question mark. Which I don't know the history of that, but yeah, that's just something to note. So this first sentence with the what looks like a semicolon at the end, that's a question. Um, yeah, so which makes sense given the next sentence. And then if we look at the third one, this is just something that I forgot to note previously. If we look at the first one, the that little period that's a little higher up after Lue in the third one, that is the semicolon. So that's to denote a semicolon, and then the semicolon is to denote a question mark. So that's just something you'll have to keep in mind. Um, which one are you guys having trouble with? Is there a word that
I have no idea what we just did. I don't know, mental overloading.
No.
Something is not knowing or not.
yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So let's
You said they. Whoops, no, what does that mean? See, I'm
yes.
struggling with
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
sounds.
So yep, so I'll yep, so you got that one down. So
But they.
yeah, that we'll get there.
Circle of adult.
So
Yes.
yeah. Adelphi is just the word for sister, which I is in the next. Yeah. Yep. Um,
And then.
Fame, B-I-N. Well,
Thing, but it's,
Hmm?
yeah.
Actually, in modern Greek, the u can be pronounced v in diphthongs, but this one here, the ou is just the u sound. So if so, do you know what form that is? The akuane. Um, this is one of the things we looked at. This is the exactly. So this is the infinitive, and which makes sense because those go with the fellow, the verb for wishing. Yes. So exactly, yes. But because it's that um because it has the semicolon after it, it's going to be a question, so we can just phrase it as a question. So, does the sister wish to hear? And then ugnosko. Uh, yeah, exactly. So we'll parse this here. So because we haven't done the case system, all of the nouns are just going to be in the subject of the verb. So adelphe is the subject. And we know that it's the subject because if we look at the verb thele, it's if we go back up to our paradigm chart, exactly, we have thelo, thele, stele. So thele takes a third person subject. So in this case, she teaches, and then we have a supplied verb or a supplied noun, adelphe. So adelphe teaches. I actually I realize that maybe this is confusing in the sense that when you have the third person, so Pariu um, she teaches, that's just a substitute. It can be any noun. So any noun that is an I or you is going to take the third person. So Adelphe Thele is not the sister she teaches, but just the sister teaches. In the same way that, Theos Thele is God wishes. Or you could supply any subject. But if the subject is an I or you, it's going to be in the third person. If there's no subject, you can just give it a general he or she. But if there is a subject, which in this case we have adelphe, we're going to use that as our subject. So adelphe thele, the sister teaches. Or sorry, the sister wishes. Yes. So mhm. And that's okay. This is something that we'll look at more. But thele, adelphe, akuein. So thele is a third singular noun, present tense, because it's the only tense we've learned. So thelo, thele, stele, we have thele, and then a noun that's in the nominative, which we'll learn next time. So the sister wishes, and then akuein, so akuo is I hear, and then we have, instead of any our personal endings, we have ain, which is just the infinitive. So adelphe, thele, akuein, the sister wishes to hear. Does that part make sense? And if not, that's okay.
Definitely see it written and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially you've got two verbs with a noun in between.
Yes.
Your brain puts all that, stirs it after a bit.
And this is also difficult because this is not the order we would expect in English, right?
Right.
Like you see thele adelphe, and in your head you go, okay, well, she wishes, and then you have a noun right after. So in your head is like she wishes the sister, because you would expect that order in English. And it will become more clear when we look at the endings on nouns because that indicates what's going on. But just note that all of the nouns in this sentence, because we haven't learned the case system, are going to be the subjects of the sentence.
For the verb.
Mhm. Which is confusing, and I almost wish that uh, the person Croy, who wrote the textbook where I'm getting these sentences from, wouldn't have included nouns in the section before we start talking about nouns. Because if you look at the next part, you guys seem to get that one more, the u gnosko, just I do not know, which makes sense because you have the verb plus the ending o, so you know gnosko, and then you have u just to mark to negate it, which makes much more sense, I think, at this point. If we look at the next one, this one's also a lot more simple because it doesn't have a noun in it. So why don't I read it out, and then we'll parse the verbs. So we have luusi. So what ending is that? Do you remember the usi? And you can consult your paper if you'd like. Yes. So, so luusi is they, then whatever luo is, and then kai. Yep. And then thelomen. So we know that thelo is to wish, and then the amen ending. Yep. Yep. And But then we have oo there as well. So we're right to say we wish, but then we have to negate it with the oo. So we do not wish blepane. No, yes, exactly. So luusi, if we look up what luo is in our vocab, then we can put the whole thing together. So we go up, we look at luo. So in this case, it can be loosen or destroy. Like I said, these sentences don't always make the most sense. But we'll go with loosen just because it's the first one. So luusi is a third plural. So we'll translate that as they. For luo, it's loosen or destroy. Maybe destroy makes more sense in this context. So luusi, they destroy kai u thelum and blepane. Exactly. Yeah. There we go. Gosh, he put some complicated ones in this one. Let me see if there's one that perhaps would be easier. So thele, that's the one that means wishes. Lege or from Lego is to say.
So they destroy and we do not wish to see.
Yes, perfect. Are you on 6? It sounds like you're reading 6. Yep. Would it help if I sounded it out or if I read out 6 out loud? I'll try it. You got the you
To say that wishes something written or right,
Mhm.
and then that remember what that is.
That one's to teach. But I mean, yeah, you're getting very close to putting together. So we have Adelphos lege, so the brother says, because lege is the third person ending, so it's going to take third person subject, which we have. So
He wishes. Written and
Yep.
thought.
yep. So
They're both infinitives,
Mhm.
something into something.
Yep. So the brother says that he wishes, and then the way that we're going to form these is when we have fellow plus the infinitives is he wishes to blank and to blank.
To write, to teach.
Exactly. Okay, that's the time we have. Um, yeah. Yeah, I just want to say I know like the first couple weeks are, and this applied for me, it applies to basically everyone, are the most frustrating. Because you're still working on the alphabet, you're working on the sounds, it's moving quicker than you'd like it to. But just know that it's part of the process for everyone. And the fact that, we've spent 3 hours together, sometimes only, for some of us, only two, and you've read a sentence in the Greek language, a full sentence in the Greek language, it's, yeah. And you've sounded out and you could probably go back and sort of understand some sentences from the actual original language of the Greek. I mean, it's going to be rewarding and I promise you guys are doing very well. It doesn't seem like, it doesn't feel like it. It never feels like it. But truly, I think, you know, in the coming weeks, you'll find it, you're understanding more and more of it. We're already moving at a pretty decent pace. So do not be discouraged. Okay, let me.
Shouldn't have power now.